Hello, I'm chess expert Gil Luna. This video is on pawn promotion. Now, getting a passed pawn to the other side is not as easy as it sounds. Normally what happens is I will give this position to young students and I tell them, okay, your goal is to try to promote this pawn and get this pawn to the other side. And as soon as they move, they push the pawn up. It's their natural instinct. Okay, I'm trying to get to the other side. I'm going to push the pawn up. Okay, now let me show you what normally happens when this pawn comes up. The white king goes towards the pawn. And now you have to find a way to promote this pawn. Okay, so the king will go over. And normally you're going to get to this position where you push this pawn up. Okay. And normally you're going to get here and it's going to be a draw, a stalemate. Okay, you go king here. White has no possible moves. White is not in check. Okay, and it's a stalemate. Okay, now there are other ways to get to that position, but normally we're going to do that one more time so you can see. You push this pawn up and the king comes up. And we'll try this way this time. Okay. And then we're going to reach this position. Now, if you look at this, we're here. And you're forced to go here as black. And what happens is you see this. If you do the same thing back here, then it's a stalemate. Okay, and that's normally what happens. Okay, so king here, king there, king here. We're pushing this pawn up. We get in front of the pawn. You have to defend as black. And here we go again. King here, king over, king here, push the pawn, king there. And once again, we have stalemate. So let's see what happens when we push the pawn up once. Okay, push the pawn up once, the white king comes forward. Now this king is going to get in front of this king and oppose it. We're going to push this pawn up again. The king is going to go here, and this king is going to move here. He has no choice. If not, he loses his pawn. So this should be looking familiar by now. King, pawn, king. If we move these pieces over here, guess what? We have a stalemate again. Okay, so we're going to try this. We're going to see if we get a different result this time, since we only moved the pawn up once. And guess what? We have a stalemate again. So I got some news for you. The second you push this pawn up, it's a draw. Okay? When you're trying to promote this pawn against the lone king, you can't have the pawn in front of the king. The king needs to be in front of the pawn. Okay? So your first move in this position, even though your natural instinct is going to tell you to push the pawn up, your first move should be king here. Okay, now let's see the difference in this position. Okay, king here, king up. Instead of pushing the pawn now, we're going to be in the same situation. So we're going to put our king here. Now this king is going to come up, and we are going to put our king in front of this king. Now we are opposing this king. This is called opposition. In a situation like this where you have a king in front of a king, whoever's turn it is the one who's lost opposition. Okay, so let's say it's white's turn in this position, so white moves over. Okay, now black can gain ground. Instead of being a hurry and pushing this pawn up right now, we don't do that. We move here. We've gained ground. Okay, what we're trying to do is we're trying to guide this pawn in. Okay, in order to guide this pawn in, we need to be in front of it. So what happens is naturally this king is going to come towards this pawn now. Because if you make a mistake now and you move this king up, okay, this king will come in here and the pawn is lost. All right, so now it's safe to push the pawn up. We push the pawn up with check. The king comes back, and what do? We push the pawn up again? No, we do not push the pawn up again. We bring our king up. We're not in a hurry to push this pawn up. We simply bring our king up right here. Once again, we are guiding this pawn in, right? In order for this checkmate to work, in order for this promotion to work, we need to guide this pawn in. So now the king is going to try to get in front of the pawn. All right, now we would love to be here right now. If we are here, then we're controlling what's called the promotion square. This square is the promotion square. If we control this promotion square, we can promote, but there's a problem. The pawn is still a little too far away. So if we go here and we try to control this promotion square, and white plays king here, okay, white is threatening to play king here, and our pawn is lost. So we have to go back again. So it's too early for that. So white's going to go here. We cannot control this promotion square. So what do? It's safe to push the pawn up. Our king is still in front of it. Okay, so now after this king goes here, all right, after this king goes here, now this is the critical moment. Okay, once again, what are we looking for? We're looking for opposition. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our king in front of this king. Now, once again, we have opposition. Okay, this forces white to choose a side. White needs to move to the left or to the right, and wherever white goes, let's say white goes here, now we can control a promotion square with king here, and we simply guide our pawn in. There's no stopping it at this point. Now, let's say that white chose to go this way. Same idea. We go king here. We're controlling our promotion square, and we are guiding the pawn in. Now you can promote and do the king-queen checkmate. All right, so let's look at this again. All right, we're going to move our king up. Now, what are we looking for in this position? We're looking for opposition. King in front of king. Okay, opposition. This king needs to choose a side. Now we can gain ground. Now, if this king decides that it's not going to come for our pawn now and play something like king here, you're fine. You can take opposition again, okay? And then when the king moves over, you can play here. And when the king comes for your pawn, you need to make sure that you push it up. Now, the king cannot get to this critical squares to stop this pawn. So the king will most likely go back again. Safe to push up our pawn. Okay, now, if the king comes here, what do? King in front of king. Force the king to choose a side. Now, let's say that the king decides to come here. Now our task is easier. Now what the king did was give us direct control of the promotion square. So now what we do is we simply move our king up, and there's no stopping the pawn promotion. Okay, remember, don't be in a hurry to push the pawn up. The moment you push this pawn up in this position, it's a draw. Okay, make sure you move your king first, and what you're doing is you're guiding this pawn in. Now, it's not just important to know how to do this. It's also important to know how to save yourself if your opponent messes up. Okay, so for example, let's say I'm playing white in this position. Okay, I'm going to flip this board, playing white in this position, and black doesn't know how to do this and plays d5 and immediately pushes the pawn. Okay, so you also need to know how to defend this, not just how to do it, but how to defend it. Because if you make a mistake here, the person with the pawn can still win. Okay, this is not an automatic stalemate, okay, or an automatic draw. You actually have to defend this. I'm going to show you how easy it is to mess this up. So I'm going to go towards this pawn. Okay, I'm going to go towards this pawn. And now this king is going to come here. Now, what's important to know, there's basically one phrase that will help you with this defending this position. It's called straight back. Okay, so in this position, I go straight back. Okay, so now the king comes here. All right, now what are we doing? We're looking for opposition. All right, so we're not going to go straight back now, okay? Because we go straight back now, we lose. All right, it's only when there's one rank separating the two kings that we're doing that. If I go straight back now, okay, black will play king here. Black house now gain opposition. I have to move out of the way, and this king is going to guide this pawn in just like you learned. So guess what? Just like that, one square, one move difference, white is lost. So we're not going to do that. We're going to oppose this king. King in front of king, opposition. Okay, so pawn goes up. We move our king here. What do we do in this position? Straight back. All right, so now king here, king in front of king, opposition. They push our pawn up. King in front of the pawn. King here, what do we do? Straight back. Now, if look how easy it is to mess this up once again. Let's say I decide to go here. Okay, I decide to go here. Well, guess what? Now the king comes on this side. When you try to oppose the pawn and get in front of it, what black does is black plays d2, and now this king is not here where it normally is for the stalemate. Okay, now white has an escape square. So white moves out of the escape square and black moves forward, and there's no stopping the promotion. That's how easy it is to mess that up. So here, we have to remember straight back. Okay, so now whichever side this king goes, we get in front of it. Okay, we don't go to the opposite side or you lose. Pawn here, king over, black is forced to go here, and it's a stalemate. Now here you have to be careful because I've seen players in time pressure try to have the other person mess up. Okay, so some people realize that this is going to be a stalemate, and they say, okay, so I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to try to mess this person up. When they go here, instead of pushing the pawn, I'm going to go back again. Okay, so then you got to go there, and they say, okay, I'm going to go try this side, and you got to remember straight back. Okay, you got to remember straight back. So king in front of king, we don't go this way. So instead of accepting the stalemate once again, they say, okay, I'm going to try this move. Okay, that's fine. Let them try that move. Oppose the pawn. King in front of king behind the pawn, straight back. And they might keep trying to see if you mess up. Okay, you have to make sure you remember that principle of straight back. Okay, because if they keep doing this to you, then you can mess it up. But it's that simple. Okay, you got to know how to do this, and you got to know how to defend against it. Because your opponent might give you an opportunity, especially back here, okay? Or maybe they didn't even push this pawn. Maybe this was the position, and this pawn was here, and you already know that you can get a draw out of this, okay? By simply moving your king up and simply remember the principle of straight back, okay? Now, let's look at this one more time. Okay, we're opposing this king. King in front of king, opposition. What do? Straight back. What do? Straight back. Okay, the king goes this way, we go this way. The king goes this way, we go this way. Okay, you are fighting against this king. And you have to look at it that way. You are fighting against this king, and the pawn is in the way. Okay, so the king is going to try here. We're going to get in front of it. He's going to push again. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to get in front of the pawn. All right, king is going to try this. What do? Straight back. King is going to go here. What do? We get in front of him. Okay, the king wants to try here. Perfect. We get in front of him. All right, so whatever happens, you need to be in front of this king. Pushes the pawn, king here, and stalemate. So in this lesson, you were able to learn how to promote the pawn and how to save the game if your opponent makes a mistake and force your opponent into either stalemate or giving up the pawn. Thank you. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed this video.